Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Vision Maker podcast. I am with Mars Black,
Mr. Mars Black.
Mr. Mars Black. And the topic that we are going to be diving into today is he's a professional cinematographer, my former cinematography teacher when I went to college, and he's a comic book artist.
I passed him.
Fortunately.
Made,
I'm glad I wasn't that bad.
Made it by that much. No, I'm
That
kidding.
bad, right?
No.
So yeah, pretty much thanks for coming out here. First of all, I really
Absolutely.
appreciate it. How does one become like a professional cinematographer or slash comic book artist? Like what kind of like inspired you to kind of dive into this industry?
Well, comic books is what got me into making films.
Mm-hmm.
As a kid, going to the library, one of the books, the two books that really influenced me were these two right here. How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way,
Oh, that's so
and
dope.
Sons the Origin of Marvel Comics. And as a kid, like basically, like once I found out about these, nobody else got to take them out of the library. They were just mine. They were just like every chance they would let
So
me take them out.
are these so you used to rent it
It
and
was
then
it
you got
wasn't
'em?
these. No, these I bought.
Okay.
These are yeah. But
Gotcha.
but yeah, I was basically just obsessed with comics and like this book here is like such an incredible book because it's taught like imagine like learning how to draw from one of the best comic book artists in history. This guy's name is John Buscema, and have like
Mhm.
Stan Lee provide commentary. And just like getting exposed to comic books when I was a kid, one it helped me get into reading
Mhm.
because it was like a really easy way to learn how to read because
Mhm.
like, it's like you look at the pictures and you're like parents, my parents would read to me at first, and
Right.
then as you just go through it enough times it's like you just start putting the words together yourself.
Mhm.
And it
Mhm.
was just like that was like a huge jump in my education. And my parents always encouraged that. They always encouraged like going to the library and knowledge and books and art and like I really had a really great background for that. And that just kind of became like like almost my identity as a kid, where I was the artist. Whatever grade I was in, I was always known as the artist, and I would draw pictures for everyone, and that was my thing, and just like being obsessed with comic books. And I was lucky because I came of age just when like Image Comics were starting, and that was becoming like a big thing. And that was the time where, see, like all these characters here, like these characters were all created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. Okay, they don't own any of these characters. These are all
Yeah.
owned. I mean, these are all owned by Disney Comics. And that was the other thing, is like as a kid, like becoming aware of the idea that other people own these characters, and they're created by people. And like especially like as a kid, getting exposed to Todd McFarlane and Rob Liefeld and Jim Lee. They were young guys who were making these comic books.
Mhm.
So it seemed really like possible and really doable that this is something that I could achieve for myself. And that made it kind of doable as well. So like this is a piece I did when I was a kid. I was 11 years old when I did this one, and I showed it to Todd McFarlane. This is Todd McFarlane's Spawn, and what's cool about this character is Todd McFarlane owns this character. This is his property, and he is not letting it go. Okay, he was a big artist for Marvel Comics back in the '90s, and he reinvigorated Spider-Man. He had a huge hand in the creation of Venom, and
Mhm.
he doesn't own those characters, and he felt really really lousy that this giant corporation was making huge amounts of money, and he got only a tiny fraction
Mhm.
of it. So that's where Spawn came from. So he wanted to do his own thing, and that's like hearing about that as a kid, it was like, okay, this is something like it's doable, it's possible.
Mhm.
And like I loved art, and I just kept working on it. But the thing that I learned was that once I started making my own comic book pages, I had to learn how to tell a story.
Mhm.
And it was like okay, like they would tell you like, oh, like storytelling is important. Well, how do you learn storytelling? And there weren't as many books about making comic books back in those times, but there were tons about that information in the filmmaking side of the library.
I
So
I was just
that's
about to say.
that's where I got into filmmaking, because it's like how to tell
Okay.
that story. It was like they had a whole vocabulary of like, here's how you tell a story. So
Gotcha.
that's where like the filmmaking kind of stuff became like, an obsession for me.
So I guess you could say like the pursuit of trying to figure out how to do storytelling in general. How did that lead to you, like with cinematography though specifically? Because you would think that, hey, I would want to be a writer in that case,
It was
but you did cinematography with the technical aspect. So how did that happen?
it was this book here, Masters
Gotcha.
of Light. This is like in high school, I would literally read this book like under my covers, like with like a flashlight, because like my mom was like, "No, no, you gotta go to bed." It's like that's enough.
Mom, I'm reading.
And this is such a great book because like Masters of Light, they talk about like heroes in the cinematography business: Nestrel Mendros, John Alonzo, Bill Butler, Michael Chapman, Conrad Hall, Gordon Willis. Gordon Willis shot Godfather, and like each one of these
Gotcha.
guys in this book, there it was really cool because they would really lay out their personal view on art, and each guy
Hmm.
was completely different, and it was like wow. And it's like then I started tracking down these guys films and like wanting to fill
Hmm.
that in,
Yep.
and then that just became a huge obsession with filmmaking and cinematography and learning like the nuts and bolts. Like I learned like kind of as a kid, like a lot of the things that I was attracted to were like comic books, Dungeons and Dragon,
There you go. Yep.
football, cinematography. All these things are like very
That.
complicated things. I love like complicated things,
Hmm.
and cinematography fit right in with that because there's a million things to talk about and a million things to learn about.
Yeah,
Yeah,
man, you get me all nostalgic because like some of the I mean, you probably like your journey towards it was probably a little bit different, but like I'm just looking back, like just thinking you saying that, it makes me think of the funny thing is that what kind of got me interested in movies a little bit though too was actually Batman Forever, believe it or not.
okay, yeah. That's really funny.
Because I never saw a movie like that before. Because like I grew up on like the classic '80s stuff, like Die Hard and Rambo and stuff like that, which
Sure,
were
yeah,
kind of more realistic.
right.
But I didn't know movies could take it to like a zany level, like Batman
I
Forever
mean, that is
does.
like that is like the comic book in kind of like
Yeah,
filmmaking. Yeah,
yeah, and probably at that time, Batman Forever is probably like the closest thing to like a comic book panel within an actual movie.
and
If
and the color palette like was so
yes.
like definitely stolen from the comic book world.
Mhm,
Yeah,
and very saturated, harsh colors and all
insane.
that kinda
Yeah,
stuff, and I was a big fan of Batman and all that, and then once that movie kinda hit and just kinda hit me where it was just like, "This seems kinda interesting,"
yeah,
and then that was kinda like the start of, like, "This is kinda interesting to me," and that's when I kinda started paying attention to it, and then it just downhilled from there.
yeah. The full obsession hits. Yeah, that's it.
But it like I said, it's just cool stuff like that that kinda gets you going, you know what I mean?
For real. Yeah, yeah.
Having said all that though, with the cinematography stuff and everything, you worked with like some pretty big companies. To my understanding, Disney was one of them, right?
Have I worked for Disney? I don't know. I've never worked for. I've worked for.
Oh wait, or was it?
I've worked for DreamWorks.
Okay,
I've worked for Sotheby's. I've worked for Porsche,
there you go.
Toyota,
Okay,
Lexus. A lot of music videos. Animal Collective.
so before I push it a little bit further, but how'd you kind of when you kind of decided that cinematography was kind of how you were going to pursue it originally with storytelling and all that? How did you kind of get started with that? Had you?
Well, the decision was like in high school whether to go to film school or whether to go to art school or like go to like the Joe Kubrick school, like
Okay,
that's like a comic book school.
okay.
So I was very lucky because as a kid I didn't bring it with me. One of my as a kid on Long
Mhm.
Island growing up, there was a great teacher that I got to work with named John Tartaglione, and
Okay.
he was a Marvel artist. He was a Marvel inker. He did the Pope book. It was like the highest selling comic book ever.
Oh, wow.
And so I knew him since I was like a little kid, like maybe I was like 10 years old, 11 years old. You know,
Gotcha.
going to his class, and he was very instructive, and he said that basically like you can do art at any time. He's like, if you go for film, he's like, you're gonna like there, you know, it's hard to get on the set of like $1 million music video set.
Yes.
It's like,
Yeah.
you know, how do you get to that point? And it's like going to NYU, you know, enabled me to kind of get into that world and get exposed to like those kind of people. And you know that was the thing is like going to NYU was a good decision and you know it was a very expensive decision, you know, but it was a
The
very it was a
the scam, by the way, folks.
well, that's I mean, the way I looked at film school was that I didn't really look at film school like I have to get an A on every class. Like
Yeah, yeah.
I couldn't care less about my grades. I like when I went to high school, I like missed like like skipped class 2 days. When I went to college, I skipped like all the days because if I was actually making money in film school working on music videos and working on commercials like when I was
Gotcha,
in
gotcha.
school because I had these opportunities and we used the school as a facility. We had
Mhm.
access to their production insurance, we had access to their equipment,
That
and
that sounds familiar.
yeah. So and that's the way like my friends like we were all trying to rent gear. Like the
Yep.
biggest thing that I can say like if you're going to film school is that go to film school to try to make friends with people and to try to build relationships with people and to try to get to know the people who you want to be in the trenches with because that was one of the things that I give NYU great credit for is that
Mhm.
the students that I went to school with are like my band of brothers.
Yep.
Like we trust each other 100%. We continue to work with each other. We have each other's backs.
Yep.
And it's
Yep.
really a great reference. And when I was at school, like one of the things that we did was we try to go and meet all the different production rental houses and become friends with all the guys who own the rental houses and introduce ourselves to them. And they would cut us deals. Like they knew we were in film school. They want to help us out because they
Mhm.
know we're the ones who are going to be filming the movies in the future when there's big budgets. So they
Gotcha.
wanted to be nice to us. So that I always considered like in film school, I wasn't just a cinematographer. I was a producer as well to
Okay.
try to make like the first feature film I shot when I was 21 and we shot it in Texas, in Houston, Texas.
Oh, wow.
We shot for 28 days straight in
Wow.
35 millimeter, and we used all short ends. Okay, and short ends are like you don't get the new mags. You go to like the commercial places after they have after that like whatever the film that comes back. Whenever they have 100 feet left over or 200 feet left over,
Mhm.
they'll sell you those. They would at the time they would sell them to you at very very low
Yep.
prices. So
Yep.
we wouldn't have to pay 60 cents a foot. We would pay like 9 cents a foot to buy the film and
It's
make it.
crazy.
Yeah, so that's how we were able that's how I was able to shoot my first feature when I was 21 in 35 millimeter because of that,
Wow.
because of those connections and just making it seem like to the production companies I was working the that I was a viable person to work with, and then we would
Mhm.
get a deal from Technicolor, and people when you're a film student, you want to go and sell your passion to people
Mhm.
because that's what gets professionals like to sit up and take notice. If you're willing to make sacrifices and work really hard, and like that's what people are looking for. To get somewhere else, you have to make sacrifices,
Mhm.
and people pay attention for sure.
So you kind of knew those contacts even before you went to film school
No,
and
no,
all that
no.
kind
I
of
I
stuff
did all that. I made all those contacts in film
in film
school.
school.
Yeah,
Okay.
when I was because like that's the thing is like I'm work doing this shoot in NYU and
Yeah.
like just they get to know you. All the people get to know you and you become a known.
That's
That's
crazy working on like a project in Texas
yeah.
for it was
And
for a film
it
like a
was it
school
was rough,
project?
yeah. That we had our investor basically the deal was that we had a film for like deal was he's like all right I'll rent the gear but you have to shoot every single day. So
Gotcha.
we had to shoot for 28 days straight. It was like
Holy shit.
craziness.
I
Yeah.
I thought my shoot was crazy when I had to get a shot over the overpass in my throughway
No, we
here on
worked
Long Island.
we worked 18-hour days. We were
That's
crazy. I
crazy.
mean, and I didn't. I'd never been to Texas before that
Yeah.
point, and like I didn't really even understand like Texas in July is like it's like tropical. It's not
Yeah.
like I thought it
It's
was
hot.
like I thought it
Yeah.
was like the Dust Bowl or like like no. It's like the tropics. So yeah.
Jeez.
So that was a very unique experience.
But I, I
So
I could even imagine just like the whole travel aspect of it, of like working on a film and all like, hey, our location's in Texas.
yeah.
Wait, we're going to Texas
Well,
to shoot. You
that's a
know?
draw. That's like for kids who are like from New York. It's like that sounds cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean that's one of the great things about my job is that I've got to travel around the whole world on other people's dime and not pay myself. I got
That's
I
still crazy that you had those kind of experiences in college, though.
yeah, yeah.
I
I got to go to Guatemala. I got to go to the Czech Republic. I got my backpack stolen in the Czech Republic by a gypsy, and then I stole it back because we were doing a scout and I'm like working with the director and we're
mhm.
just like having fun and we're looking around. I put my bag down and this guy just slid right by and just grabbed the bag and just walked off with it. And then
Didn't see that coming in your
yeah,
future, huh?
and then three days later, we're at the same location. The same guy is there, and I said, "Hey, that's my bag." And I like tracked him down and got it back. And when I told my 7 foot tall Czech assistant that like my bag bag was stolen. He's like, "Oh, bag was stolen. Let's go beat him." And the director's like, "No, no, let's get the next shot." And I'm like, "Good.
Lawsuits to
Let's yeah."
on the down low,
Yeah.
please.
This guy was hilarious, man. Like he would start the day. Our day would start like 6 o'clock in the morning. He would start with a stein of beer on the case,
Oh my
and
god.
just like he would be drinking like
So
6 o'clock in the morning.
so the way my like senior project approach, I guess this was like your senior project type of
That
film
one was
project.
that was my, I guess, junior project when I was in Prague.
Okay,
Yeah.
because I'm just curious of like because the teachers when we were in class were kind of hands off and everything,
Yeah, which is
but
good.
in your case it sounds like the teachers were kind of more hands on, kind of like operating as like a director type of
Not
thing.
not really.
Not
No,
really.
not
Okay.
really. They were cool. I mean, the Czech people were very cool. Like we would
Okay.
usually have classes in the morning, and then we would like do our own thing. And
Okay.
it was interesting because like when I was over there, there was actually filming From Hell,
Okay.
the Alan Moore comic book.
Oh.
So
Okay.
so
Okay.
we actually I got to hang out with Heather Graham, which is pretty fun. Yeah. So, because we had our production company, the people who were like working as our like producers, like who were like the local producers who knew
Okay.
things, they were working on that shoot as well. So like they were like, "Oh, she's really bored and wants to hang out with
And
some
that
Americans."
so how did those like contexts kind of come together in a
Through the
sense
film school.
through the film school?
Yeah, through
Okay.
it was, FAMU. Yeah,
Okay.
that's
Gotcha.
that's like, that's the film school that I think Roman Polanski went to. Very,
Okay.
very good film school.
Gotcha.
Yeah, they were known for, like, their cinematography stuff, man. The guys
Okay.
were great. They really knew their stuff.
Be curious how much it's changed over the
I'm sure it's
years.
very different. I mean, see, I
Because
when I went to film school, we were just kinda transitioning over from film to the
to
digital
the
world.
digital.
So, like, we were, like,
Gotcha.
right on, like, the bottom, like, right on the ground floor of the digital world where it sucked. It was like mini DV and, like, those
Mhm.
not very now digital is ama
Yeah,
I
yeah.
love digital
But
now. I think
I
it's
assume
great.
like the classes were kind of you're kind of stuck in like a middle ground of
Well
like transition and
well,
stuff like that.
like I said, like when I went to film school, it's like their emphasis was on storytelling,
Okay. So it's just like
and
no matter what,
that
just
doesn't change.
whatever is best complementary to the storytelling at the
That
end of the
never
day.
changed.
Okay.
That's the one beautiful thing is that the storytelling ideas like doesn't matter whether you're doing a TikTok or whatever. Whether
Mhm.
when I was working at Sotheby's, the biggest thing that we always talked about was telling a story.
Mhm.
Like telling this because that's the one human universal thing that we had from when we were telling stories in caves. Like
Mhm.
that's human nature that hasn't changed. People love a story.
Yep.
They love a good story and they want to know the details like behind artwork,
Yep.
behind the whole thing. And Sotheby's was so brilliant about that was because they would take, one billionaire and who gets everything that they want and then they have another billionaire who gets everything that they want and they pit them together, and that's
Yep.
like,
Yep.
that was a pretty good gig for a while too. So, yeah.
Cool. Interesting.
Another experience. Like everything basically I've done is been kind of like another like learning experience. Whether it was
Mhm.
shooting car commercials for Porsche,
Mhm.
another completely
So you made those contacts in college,
yeah.
with like Porch and I assume
No,
like
no, that came after.
okay.
So what? So
Because I was just curious, like, how'd you go from like film school to the higher end jobs after
professional,
the
yeah.
professional stuff?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean the way it works is I mean for a lot of people we start off like when I was in film school, like I had a production company, and
Okay.
I was producing music videos for my friends.
Gotcha.
And like that's the thing is it's really funny because a lot of like the Wall Street people, they like seeing like The Rock, like making people look like rock
Mhm.
stars, like
Mhm.
making, like I would always tell my students, like, if you want to have that job of like working with LeBron James or whoever and making Nike people look like rock stars, make your friends look like rock stars first. Because
Right.
that's what's going to get you the job. If you can make your friends look cool, if you can
Mhm.
make them look like they're supposed to be on like the cover of Rolling Stone magazine, okay,
Right.
give them
Right.
give them that feel, make them look like Johnny Cash or whoever else.
Mhm.
If you can do that, you're just going to keep going up the ladder. Because what's cool is filmmaking is a meritocracy to a certain degree.
Mhm.
Like on my crew, like it took a long time to assemble the crew that I work with, and I have all different crews depending on what the job is at
Mhm.
all different budget levels.
Right.
You
Right.
know, so, so but if like assembling that crew those people are all there because it's not because of their parents or whatever. It's
Right.
because they can do the job,
Right.
you know.
Right.
And that's the thing is that one of the great things about being a cinematographer is that that's a job that's we have to do on the highest level. You do have to be a politician a little bit, but you also have to
Yeah.
get the shot. And at
Yep.
the end of the day, can you get the shot or you cannot get the shot?
Right.
That's what it comes down to,
Mhm.
And whenever I got the job, I always came back with the shots every single time. It doesn't
Gotcha.
matter. That's at the end of the day. You have to come back with the shots.
Mhm.
You have to get the material. Otherwise, your phone's gonna stop ringing.
Right. Right. Would you say it's a situation where the companies kind of call you,
Yeah, well, it was like work.
or did you and your
It
like
was
as a company team did you kind of like seek out those opportunities,
well,
or is it a little bit of
I
both?
I basically just always try to work on stuff that I liked. Like
Hmm.
on like whenever I evaluate a job, for one reason to do a job is if it's a great reel piece. If something is really going to fill out your reel or add something into that reel
Hmm.
that you don't have before, do it, you know?
Hmm.
If you already have that job and you've done that job a lot, then you can ask for more money if you don't
Hmm.
necessarily want to do that job again. That's how you kind of like one of the things that I would have is I would have like a group of people that I work with for political jobs, because that's in New York is very popular. We shoot a
Yes.
lot of political commercials,
Yes.
and like I have people that I work with on car commercials. I also shoot a lot of jewelry stuff. So
Hmm.
I have different people for all those different things.
Hmm.
And one job got me another job, which got me another job, which got me
Okay.
another job. And it's
Gotcha.
like a matter of like right now, like I'm not really like developing my cinematography reel because I'm working on the comic the last couple of years. I've been really focused on that.
Right. Right.
But when I was really going for cinematography jobs, I was always looking for the real because that's like I tell people you don't necessarily need a diploma. Like no one really in filmmaking no one really cares if you have a diploma. The only time I ever was asked for my diploma was when I worked at the film school. That was the only time anyone
Right.
ever
Right.
asked me if I actually graduated college or not because
Right.
no one cares. Can you get the shot? Do you know what you're talking
Yeah.
about?
Yeah.
That's all we care about. Are you cool to have on set? Are you fun to have on set? Are you a complainer? Those are the things we
And can you
we
get
look
the
about.
job done? Pretty
That's
much.
right.
Yeah.
And it's like that's what we're looking for. Looking
'Cause
for an interesting eye. Someone who has a good eye.
Yeah, because I remember you telling me when I was in your class that the resume and all that and the degree isn't necessarily the most important thing.
Yeah,
What the most
the
important is like
resume
the real.
the resume matters, but they want
Okay.
to see you want to see the shots too because a lot of people
Okay.
can make up some phony resume or whatever. But like and
Would
also
that be specifically for cinematography or
yeah.
okay?
Yeah, I mean that's it's like I guess like yeah, if you're like a gaffer or something, you just have to develop
Because
contacts.
I've seen some cases where some people have developed reels as like a director where they've directed a particular scene and
Right.
that's included in a reel and stuff like that. And I know there's a whole bunch of rules and all that, but basically what I'm
You
getting
just
at
you
here is
just
like
list you just list it if you're if you're
okay.
if you're putting something on a reel, it's like you say, "Oh, I did this part of it or I did that part of it." Or like I would always have
Okay.
separate reels like, you know, a lot of times in
Mhm.
car commercials, they want to see like you have the exact car, the exact color car in
Mhm.
the exact situation that you're shooting in. Like they want specificity because it's
Right.
it's like
Specifics.
because there's so much money on the line.
Mhm.
And that's why
Mhm.
it's like they want to, have it be like, "Oh, this person really can get the job."
Mm.
Yeah. And
Does that go beyond like cars? Like, were there other like jobs that you kind of worked
yeah,
in that were kind of like
absolutely because
that
like
detailed?
I would have like a reel which was just like a lot of times people love to see celebrities, like so that would be like a
Gotcha.
celebrity reel. Another one is a comedy reel. You have
Gotcha.
you we would cut. I mean, the nice thing is now that like editing is so ubiquitous,
Mhm.
you put just you have to be in charge of your own career. So be
Gotcha.
on it, be on the reel, be recutting the reel, have different versions of the reel ready to go because it's like you never know when you're gonna get a call and you're like, oh, we want to see your work, like send us a link, and he's like,
Mhm.
oh, I'm on another job, so you have to have stuff already prepared.
On the ready to
Yeah,
go.
ready to
Gotcha.
go. Yeah.
So considering all that, pretty much we went through kind of your professional career a bit there, and what's interesting though is that I feel like you kind of made like a pivot and decided
Definitely. Definitely.
Yeah,
Well, I
you kind of made a strange pivot because you're getting like these high end, high professional jobs and everything, and then you decided I'm gonna go to I'm gonna go to college teaching, and teach students how to do filmmaking and all that, or cinematography
it
specifically
it
in our
was
case. But
it wasn't much of a pivot. I mean, it was something I basically had been doing my entire cinematography career,
oh, okay,
because when I was in film school, my sophomore year, when you go to NYU, they don't let you use a film camera until your second year.
gotcha.
So it was like the first year, I was willing to work. I was working on films. I was working on all the senior films and everything.
Just to get your hands dirty with it.
Basically just to get my hands on the camera. That
Hmm.
was the goals. This is like, I want my hands on this $100 million
That
camera.
that's
You know,
that's pretty much why I wanted to be your how badly I wanted to be your TA,
yeah,
even
exactly.
though I apparently messed it up, but
Well, I don't, but like getting my hands on the equipment was so
but yeah,
important. So like
yep,
when I was a sophomore, my summer job that year was working at the film academy,
hmm,
and working at the film academy, it enabled me to teach the high school students. So basically, the same
okay,
stuff that I had just learned that year, I was basically turning around and teaching other people,
gotcha,
and it was cool because like our ages weren't really that different. So
hmm, yep,
I wasn't like a like a terrible like I wasn't like an intimidating presence for them,
hmm,
and like I could teach them, and it was a really good way to learn. Like you learn something and then you teach it.
yeah,
So it's kind of what I've been doing my whole time, is that like, when I was when I one of the classes I was teaching in film school was screenwriting.
yep,
And it was really good because like I'm reading books, I'm researching, at the
yep.
same time I'm writing.
You're learning it on your own too. Yeah.
I'm writing for Apex Hunter. Okay, I'm writing. So like I would tell the students, I'm like, "Oh, add a lot of conflict into your script." And then I'd be like, "Okay, take your own advice. Add a lot of
Yep,
conflict
yep.
into the script." So it's like it's almost like you're hypnotizing yourself, because like you teach people, and it's like, just use the advice yourself. Take it
Mhm.
along. So if you really want to be good at something, teach it to somebody else. That's the way that, like, my cinematography skills were never sharper than when I was talking about cinematography for 9 hours a day
Mhm.
every week, and I
Mhm.
had to prepare a lecture, like 2 lectures for that stuff.
And even, like, breaking it down so idiots like
Absolutely.
us couldn't even understand it.
No, and that's the thing, is that like until you like I was reading I was listening to an audiobook on Bill Belichick, and they say when Bill Belichick is over in Germany, he
Mhm.
speaks German. Wherever he goes, if he's speaking to 5-year-old kids, he speaks to them in a way that they can understand.
Mhm.
And that's the big thing, is like if you really know your subject, you should be able to boil it down and explain it to anyone, explain it to a
Mhm.
baby,
Yep. I agree 100%.
break it down. And that was the thing, is I would get questions from you guys that like, I'm like, okay, yeah, like, and it would really fill in like anything that was a gap. By teaching it, would fill it all in.
Mhm.
And that was it was a wonderful experience, man. I taught for 3 years, and the reason I stopped teaching was because I wanted to make my own comic book,
Right.
and I couldn't split my attention.
Yep.
When I would get like 20 to 25 scripts a week from students, it's like
Yep.
that's a
Yep.
huge time
Yep.
commitment that I have to spend, and I have to
You
get.
pretty much have to analyze every single
That's the thing. I
one.
have to get
Yep.
myself into the mindset of my students. Like I remember one time I was teaching one student, and he didn't tell me until the end of the semester. He's like, I'm basically writing this like every script like a Family Guy episode. And it's like, wow, I wish you told me that before, because it would have changed the way I viewed the work.
Right, right.
That's the things that you learn. You're like those like kind of blind spots that
Mhm.
once, and it's really hard to kind of like prescribe that for people,
Mhm.
and describe that situation. And that was something I learned in teaching that class. It was a great lesson, but I learned that I couldn't teach and work on my own thing at the exact same time.
Mhm.
It was taking too much out of me.
Yep.
And like I could understand how like teachers, that like if they want to become a thing, they should maybe at a certain point maybe stop teaching.
Mhm.
You want to like kind of go in and go out. If you become like a professional teacher, I think it could hurt you too, because it could lead to bitterness, that if you're not doing your thing,
Yeah. No,
if you're
100%.
just spending all your time teaching and not doing your thing, I
Yep.
think that could hurt you as well.
I
Yeah.
agree 100%. Um, considering with your while you were teaching everything, I even as a former student of yours, I'd be kind of curious of like what was your goal of being a teacher? Like, what was the thing that you wanted to bestow on your students going forward, even after college and everything? If there was anything that you wanted to bestow on your students?
I mean, the biggest thing I'd always want to give to students, and this is what I got. I see. I had wonderful teachers as a kid. I had Mr. Tortaglione, and then I had this other man, Jeffrey K. Fisher, who
Hmm.
was my life drawing instructor. And the biggest thing with him was that we in life drawing class, like a lot of artists, when you work with them, they want you to kind of become like their clone.
Okay,
And Jeff never did that for us. Jeff wanted you to become the best artist you could be
gotcha.
using the way you saw the world.
Hmm.
Okay? And that's something that I basically would want from every student. Become the best of what you can do. Because I don't know what your goal is. Like when I went to film school, my goal was to basically become the best comic book, you know, maker I could.
Hmm.
And I got distracted by a lot of cars and jewelry and money, and it took a little time to get into that, but developing the skills, it took all those times to get to where I am right now, and those were all
Right.
incredible experiences.
Hmm.
Like, take from it what you can. Like one of the things that I used to show, one of the lectures I used to show was this
Hmm.
lecture on Gregory Crutzen. And Gregory Crutzen
Yes. Yep.
is a phenomenal artist. He's the still photographer, and he's this guy who sells his photography prints for like huge money, like $100,000 a print, because when he does a photograph, he hires a full film crew, and he has prop people, he
Yep.
has
Yep.
he has basically an army that he built. And the reason why I would show this documentary to the students is because they show you at the very beginning when he was on his like mother's lawn, or like
Hmm.
he was shooting
Yep.
in the
Yep.
neighborhood, and he didn't have two nickels to rub together,
Hmm.
okay? And he was from the very beginning, and he didn't know what he was doing. He didn't know his artistic statement. He
Hmm.
was very, very much at the very, very beginning, and it was wonderful to see from one shoot to another shoot to
Yep.
another shoot him become himself, him become
Hmm.
Gregory Crutzen. And I thought that was really powerful, because too often, the emphasis is placed on like overnight success.
Hmm.
And when it comes to
Yes.
artistry, there is no such thing. That
Hmm.
that it doesn't matter who you talk to, what artist you talk to. I mean, unless they're picked out of Instagram and become insta famous, very, very few people become famous overnight. And it's
Yeah.
and it's not artistically healthy to become famous overnight.
Yeah.
It'll blow your mind up.
Yeah, because from my I mean, I haven't gone viral or anything, but
Yeah.
like from my experience, though,
Me neither.
from looking in through the window and everything, it's like the thing that probably for me that I think would drive people crazy is the fact that you blow up on that one thing,
Right.
and then it turns out that's that thing that you have to stick with, and you can't really like deviate from that. Otherwise,
Right.
you run the risk of just having everything implode because everyone sees you as that thing,
I
and when you try to like deviate away from it ever so slightly, it could just it the foundation's just gone at that
I
point,
s I see
you
I see
know?
that all the time on Instagram. Like, there's artists that I love, and I see them, they put up the same picture
Yep.
every single day, and it's just like,
It's either lit the
it's
same way or the framing's the same
it feels
way.
it feels
Yeah.
like a trap, though. I
Yeah.
mean, it feels very I mean, that's one thing that I'm trying not to do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, of course.
I could very easily get sucked into, I guess, drawing cat pictures or something all day long, but, I don't exactly. I love drawing cats, but
But another thing though too, which I want to emphasize about the Gregory Kreutzmann documentary that you mentioned, is that that documentary for me really put things into perspective because it really
that's
opened up my
good.
eyes
That's
on
good.
like how in depth the production setting is.
That's right.
Because I kind of learned it early in freshman year, but that really solidified like because what's crazy about Gregory Kreutzmann's stuff is that he's not even shooting a film, but if you watch this documentary, you would not believe how extensively detailed everything is. Where it's like even the model that's the subject in the picture that he's doing has to be like put in such a uh like
Unnatural.
their poses have
Yeah.
to be in such an unnatural position, and just so the lighting can just hit it properly enough,
It's
and
all for the one image.
all for one
Yeah.
image. And he pretty much puts in like a movie level like scene breakdown, I guess, or like set build for a single shot.
That's right.
It's just, and like I said, like that really put things into perspective because like you basically have to apply that to every single scene on a film.
That's right.
And it really goes a long way of like I think going back to like the first episode of the Vision Maker podcast, when I mentioned that, like I think film students going into film school as like, hey, I'm going to be a filmmaker, but they don't realize how much work is put in.
That people have no idea. They have
It
no
it's
idea how
so
much how much
crazy.
how much goes into this stuff. Absolutely.
Yeah.
People only see like the kind of the glossy side of things and not, you know.
Wait, when did that kind of like realization hit you of like how crazy the work not work ethic, but like the amount of work that gets put into it, and like were you kind of like shocked by that? Like that did that take you by surprise? Just out
Uh
of curiosity.
No, I mean, I got right into that because of like the culture in film school. At least when I
Hmm.
was going to school, I remember the first movie I worked on was this insanely low budget horror film,
Hmm.
and it was amazing because like we would wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning. I didn't even know there was a 5 o'clock in the morning. I didn't know that existed. You know,
Didn't know that was a
yeah.
thing.
I mean, because like I came like being in high school, like I would just basically just live in my room, like in my
Mhm.
tower, drawing pictures.
Gotcha.
So it was so great to like go out like into film school, and I always consider it's almost like going to the military for like middle class kids,
Gotcha.
for a lot of people, because like you're finally out into the world, okay, and you have to
Hmm.
deal with people, and like I remember one of the first shoots I worked on. This is a Kevin Bacon movie I worked on
Okay.
when I was a sophomore in high school.
That's
Okay, yeah,
crazy.
because it was off of this. I made this short film, and one of the producers saw the film, and he says, "Hey, we're shooting this in Jones Beach, and we know you're from the island. It's like come and hang out on the set with us, work on the set with us." And it was a very interesting experience because
I'm sure.
I was 15 years old, and
Hmm.
I was working with all these crusty union guys, and they hated me. They would call me a scab. They're like, "You're a scab." I'm like, "I'm a sophomore." You know? Like you learn that like people, not everyone's gonna treat you well, but don't take it personally.
Yeah.
It is what it is. Like they're like a lot of people, especially like crew people, like they want you to pay your dues. So
Hmm.
they're gonna rib you. They're gonna
It's
give
kind
you
of
a
like an
That's
initiation
right.
type
It's
of
kind of
thing.
like an initiation. So like if people give you a hard time, don't take it personally. Just keep on smiling, keep working, learn what you can get from it, And like that's the thing is like a lot of those people, who are working there making, $200 a day, they're still making $200 a day. I make way more money than that. So
What comes around goes around.
that's right. That's right. Sometimes you have to pay your dues, and sometimes you have to do a job that's a terrible job, and you just deal with it. Like that's the big thing. Like all the guys that I like, who all the crew people that we all work together, we have so much more fun when we all work together and we don't complain,
Mhm.
and we're in it together. We have each other's
Right.
backs, and it's a really wonderful working relationship when
Yep.
that kind of thing happens.
When you go through the gauntlet, because it
That's
is a
right.
gauntlet, that's for
That's
sure.
exactly it. Because and that was the thing is
It's a brotherhood of sorts, you know.
working on that student horror film, we worked like starting at five
Yep.
o'clock in the morning.
Hmm.
We would like that. My first job was working as a clapper boy. That was the first job, loading magazines.
Yep.
Okay, and
Yep.
we worked 18 hours a day, and that was kind of like that was like. That's kind of unhealthy if you're like 50 years old working 18 hours a day. But when you're 18 years old, you don't mind. That's
Yeah.
that's fine. That's
Yep.
a good environment. So
You're like, this is. I guess this is how they do it.
this is what I want to do anyway. So
Yep.
I don't really
100%.
care about going home. So yeah.
So that's actually a good segue because one of the things is that you were once a film student and then a professor
Professor,
and
that's
the whole
right.
thing. So you kind of have the perspective of both
Yeah, so
angles
so
in a
what
sense.
happened was this is actually my first comic book that I made called The Wastrels, and it's set at a film school. It's a room of guys and a room of girls, and they're friends with each other.
Okay,
And what happened was that I was working on this comic book, and then I got the job offer to work at Five Towns.
that's right.
And I
Yep.
thought, hey, you can get the other, like, this is told from the student's point of view. This is
Hmm.
when I started the book. And I thought, hey, if you become a professor, now you can tell it from the professor point of view
Hmm.
and have all this other material. So that was really the real reason I went to become a professor, to get material, because
We
I,
we
I
were
and I got
research
a lot of
monkeys.
material.
Can you bel-
Your research.
My former professor, we were test monkeys.
That's right.
Wonderful.
I remember one
The
time
realization sets in now.
I remember one time I gave a lecture and I was talking about, comedy, you do the spit take. One of the students stood up, spit on the floor. I had to turn around and face the board because I didn't want to like burst out laughing because it was so funny.
Marcus, Trevor, Traces of Life.
Yes.
He's a fraud.
Yeah.
Our teacher's a fraud.
That's right. I was there for the material, only for the material.
If you guys are watching this, it's a fraud.
That's why when they fired me, I wasn't like, oh, well, they fired me, whatever. They fired me, and then the students were like, no,
We fought for you.
he's not fired. He's not
Yeah.
fired. You're bringing him back.
We
Brought me
yeah,
back.
we basically went to war against
Yeah.
our school to bring him
That's
back
right.
because he did
Against-
such a great job, even though he's a fraud.
Yeah.
He did such a great job that we
Well,
wanted him back.
I was skipping a lot of days because I was working at Porsche. Like I couldn't,
and, and that's the thing though, we knew that. And we totally get that. And we didn't care because you still had infinitely more knowledge than a lot of the teachers that we had during that semester. No offense.
True. True.
No offense to our other professors that taught us during that, but no, seriously, like you had the most like high professional experience, and we really were thirsting for that.
I mean,
you
that's
know?
that's one of the biggest problems with film school is trying to get people who can be professors who are also working professionally because
Yeah.
they pay like when you work on commercials, dude, they pay so much money and it's impossible to turn the money down. So it's like if you're missing, it's like the school has to be. They were flexible with me. That's the
Yeah.
only way it could work, and then
Yep.
we can make up days and we can make up classes
Yep.
because there's like working at Five Towns that doesn't even pay my rent, you know.
Yep. And,
So-
and honestly, like that format for us, I think we really enjoyed it.
Yeah, because-
and because that really unlocked your
I mean, I'm
the
telling
clubs that the film clubs that you did in between classes and all that. We had a blast with some of your shots.
and I'm telling you the cutting edge stuff. This is like
Yep.
coming right from the trenches, and
Yep.
like working with. I mean, when I would teach the commercial production class, the one thing I would advise students to do is not to make a car commercial because there's no way you can compete with us. We have
Big flex.
we have millions of dollars. I mean,
Yeah.
when we did the Porsche thing, we literally had like we took over their garages and we like the equipment list was a phone book. It was
Yep.
like 40 pages.
Yep.
There's no way to compete with that. So it's like don't make a car commercial. Only if you're in that world. So
That's fair.
Yeah.
Those are fair points, even though we totally get that
Yeah.
you're flexing right now. We totally get it. But having said that though, what would you say like the challenges? Looking at it from the perspective of both a film student and a professor now. What would you say looking back at film school back then and comparing it to nowadays, what would you say would be like some of the challenges that film students are facing
I
as
mean-
they're in college and even beyond college? And how would you what advice can you give them to kind of overcome those challenges potentially?
the biggest thing I would say is if you are going to film school, form a gang of your friends and work together because you guys are going to be your biggest resource because you're all in the trenches together and you all want to do the same thing. So pick your crew, grab your crew accordingly. And because those are people that you can work with for the rest of your life.
Yep.
And take from film school what you want to take from it. Okay, don't just be like a passive sponge because that's not going to work. I could lecture till I was blue in the face and be like, do this, you can do this, you can do this. The knowledge has to be taken and applied and made into something.
You kind of have to
Okay.
be around it like all
That's
the
right,
time.
all the time. Absolutely.
And I can attest to that because I mean I may have had like a swing swall relationship at times with how my college career went, but like I said, like I fought to be your teacher
Yeah.
assistant because I took your class first, and then after you take that class, you could become a TA.
That's right.
And I wanted that because I just wanted to be around Huber and just take in as much knowledge as I possibly can. And then now look at us.
And not film school is not for everyone, and you don't necessarily like if you necessarily don't maybe have the money for film school, you can still be a part of the film business because like I said, we're a big time meritocracy. Okay, like my buddy who I went to New York Film Academy with, he was like my assistant there. When I was shooting my senior year basically is devoted to shooting student film. So like I shot like 12 films that senior year.
Right.
And he worked. He was my AC on every film, and he got paid because he was giving up his time, so he got paid. He got a little bit of money. He got his room and board paid for.
Yep.
He got all the travel paid for, and then from there, he worked in a rental house, and then from the rental house, he became a union AC, and now he
Mhm.
he makes a great living working as a union AC. And he didn't go to film school. He just was periphery to the sides of film school. So even if you don't have the money for it, hang around film students, hang around that environment,
Mhm.
and you can get into that world and be a part of it if and go where you want to go with it. Some people will know you. Like I remember when I was first getting in, people want to put you into a box. They want to say, "Oh, you're a cinematographer, you're a gaffer, you're an
Mhm.
AC, you're that." Have different business cards. Here's my AC
Gotcha.
business card. Here's my gaffer business card. I would say if you want to become a cinematographer, it's a good idea to work the electrical department, become a gaffer, learn
Yes.
all. You got to learn all the gear backwards and forwards. Learn
Mhm.
the Harry Box book.
Mhm.
Okay, those kind of things. Like learn every piece of equipment, and then from there you can
Yeah,
develop.
because that was the thing that I kind of noticed, like even after college, where like you said, they kind of try to put you in a box and all.
Absolutely. Everyone in the film business is always putting people in
Because
boxes.
that's because
Typecasting
yeah,
everyone.
because when I was like researching, like how do I find like high end professional jobs, and how do I kind of get my foot in the door in any opportunity and all that, because I found the cinematography just from college.
Right.
Just things just opened up where it was just like I excelled at cinematography for whatever reason, and so that's the title that I kind of went with in college.
That's good. Yeah.
Um, but like I mentioned in the first episode, I kind of did a little bit of everything though, just to gain that knowledge and all that. But like how you said, like I kind of felt like while pursuing that, I was like I felt like I could only do like cinematography jobs and all that, even though I had experience in like editing or gaffer and all this other stuff. Not
It's a rare
yeah.
person who does cinematography and editing. That's because like I have like literally no patience for like
Yeah.
editing. I can't unless I like fall asleep.
Yeah, because I pretty much started off editing in high school. That's what I did some little
Oh, is
projects
that
here
your
and
back?
there.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I fell I took it was media production, and I did a recreation of Sherlock Holmes. It's the Guy Ritchie Sherlock Holmes movie,
Oh yeah. Cool.
and pretty much our big project we had to do like a commercial, a scene recreation, and shout out Mr. Kasky, by the way. Good, I love that dude. He was my first film teacher, and I he kind of opened up the floodgates for me to even think about going crazy enough to even pursue it.
That's the first thing that teachers have to do is inspire and like make
Uh,
people think it's
yeah,
possible to do it.
yep.
Yeah.
And so, pretty much, I did. So the senior project was you were able to do another one of those projects again, but
Right. Oh,
obviously something
cool.
different. And so you basically had to make all those throughout the whole year in media
That's
production.
that's a, that's a really good way to do it because it's very
Hmm.
often that first time you do something it's not going to be
Yep.
right at all,
Yeah.
and
And
it's
this is high
really yeah
school,
it's really good
very
to have that
limited.
that second pass
Yep.
for
And
sure.
and so it was pretty much like guerrilla filmmaking in
Guerrilla
a
warfare.
sense.
That's exactly what it is.
Well, guerrilla warfare filmmaking and the whole thing. And so, what happened was I recreated the fight scene where Robert Downey Jr. and Jude Law fight this big guy with a mustache. He's like the big muscle, and he gets beaten up. They're investigating a
it's
lab
it's
of
funny. It's
sorts.
funny. I think my buddy actually worked on that scene. Yeah, yeah.
Well, here's the thing though. So I was one day I was struggling trying to put the last project together, and I was down in my basement. And I was like, my basement kind of looks like that scene from Sherlock Holmes. Let me try to do that and bang
Yes.
that out. And I ended up banging it out in like 2 days of shooting and then like 2 days of editing. My friend literally spent 2 days in high school editing it all
It's
together,
crazy, but
just to get it in time. But it, let me just throw the icing on the cake though. The project came out so good that that my teacher was like, "Can I love how this came out. Can I have a copy of it so I can promote my class with
that's awesome.
it?"
But that's a good method that you use there because basically
Yeah.
you did like the Robert Rodriguez method, like
Yeah.
where he basically like what he always said was if you're making your first film, make a list of all the cool stuff you have access to,
Yep.
and then write your film around those
Mhm.
things.
Yep.
That's what you kind
Yeah.
of did.
Yeah, and the project came out so good, and my teacher's reaction was so shocked about it, how well and how closely created we made it with everything. I was like, you know what? Maybe I do have a knack for this. There's something to this. I love movies. I love how they. I've always watched like behind the scenes, even growing up, and then this kind of opened up the floodgates of like I kind of want to be in this world now.
I mean, that is it's a remarkable world where we have all these like back scene commentary and director
Yeah.
commentary on like I mean
Literally
on
that
everything.
literally,
Yeah,
I think I mentioned the first episode as well, but, like, literally, that could be your film school.
absolutely. Yeah,
You know, I
yeah.
if you go out of
Listen,
your way to
listen
really
to
find the behind the scenes on the Blu-rays that are out there, like, you told me you expanded your collection a bit. I have a
oh,
massive
it's
movie
insane.
collection right
Yeah,
now.
it's insane.
I just spent $30 on a PlayStation 2 Steelbook of Resident Evil 4 just because I had a documentary on how they made the
That's
game.
sick. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I didn't even know this even existed.
That's sick. I might have to
But,
pick
like
that up too.
but I'm just saying, like, that can be how you gain your knowledge. It doesn't necessarily have to be from film school, but there's still some value to it, I will say.
I mean, that's the thing now is that we live in a world of like just an insane flood of knowledge.
Mhm.
Like the internet has just opened the floodgates to everything,
Yeah.
and there's no dearth of ability to learn from cool people.
Well, considering that with the wealth of knowledge that we have at our disposal now, how did you apply that to like your recent works, like Apex Hunter and all that kind of stuff?
Well, it's interesting that you say that.
Tell me the whole process.
Because basically like this is Apex. This is one of the first drawings of Apex. Okay, this is actually I showed this to you guys
Yes.
when in between our semesters,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yep.
this is kind of like the develop. This is like the finished version of it
Mm-hmm.
now. But so when I created Apex Hunter, the idea was my favorite movies, my favorite stories all have incredible villains.
Mm-hmm.
So start with the villain,
Mm-hmm.
create the ultimate villain. Like I would look at like Darth Vader
Mm-hmm.
or
Mm-hmm.
Joker or Hannibal Lecter, and it was like those were kind of like the touchstones.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, okay, the ultimate villain is the villain who knows everything about you. That's
Mm-hmm.
the ultimate villain. Okay, knowledge.
Especially nowadays.
Especially now, that's the thing is that's the ultimate that's his ultimate superpower is knowledge. Okay, and
Mhm.
that's what Sun Tzu said in the Art of War. Okay, he said that if you knew everything about your opponent, they have no chance of defeating you. And that's basically the theme of the comic book is that knowledge is power.
Mhm.
Okay, and that's I try to reflect that in every bit of every scene. Basically, where that's basically like the kernel of the theme that I'm writing
Mhm.
around.
Okay.
Yeah, and developing. Because that's the thing is so Apex is this evil kind of demonic character and his superpower is knowledge because he works inside of the world's most popular social network. He does the computer security for the social network.
Mhm.
So he has access to everyone's information. So he has basically like all these psychological profiles.
Oh boy.
So the way it works is that his victims, the way he targets people, is that he doesn't really actually pick them. The algorithm
Oh god.
picks
This is
these people,
exactly where it's going.
but everyone fits. There's everyone fits into this paradigm, and he knows everyone's secrets,
Mhm.
so he knows how he can manipulate people and get them to do what he wants them to do. Where he's like this master chess player, moving pieces around the chessboard, and as the reader a lot of times because it's about the occult. Like the character himself,
Mhm.
he grew up in a cult. He was initiated when he was a teenage boy.
Mhm.
He was initiated into this cult, so he has all this occult knowledge that he has applied. That's kind of combined the occult with technology together.
Oh
Okay,
my god.
yeah, yeah. So
You're insane.
he's doing all these different rituals, and the rituals that I put into the book are real rituals. They're a
Mhm.
lot of like when I was developing the character. I was looking at all these different cults, and one of the main cults one of the main people that I was looking at was this guy Aleister Crowley,
Mhm.
who was this guy who basically thought he was like the devil. He thought he was the Antichrist. He was the beast. His mother, when he was a child, would call him the beast.
Does Apex
What's
like
that?
any of that?
Well, he gets it. So basically, like Aleister Crowley, like he was in the Beatles album. I don't know if you
Okay.
ever see the one with all the faces. It's
Oh,
which album?
Victor, you're a music guy.
Which
Which
Beatle
album?
album with all the faces on it? No, not
When
Revolt.
it's like
No,
written?
no, with all the small faces. No, it's later on in their career. Sergeant Pepper.
Oh, you're talking
Oh,
about all the people like a group of
Yeah. The
yeah.
Sergeant Pepper,
Sergeant
right?
Pepper, yeah.
Yeah.
The
So
Burger King.
Alistair Crowley is on. He's in
Okay.
that album because like
Okay.
he was so influential. Basically, he was
Okay.
creating his own religion. So basically, like my character, he comes like Alistair Crowley created the cult, and then he created like all these other people created
Mhm.
other cults. So he's like 4 levels. 4 cults deep to where he was kind of
Oh
initiated
my
through.
lord.
Yeah. So a lot of the ideas that he kind of talked about in the 19th century have kind of come true in the 20th century, and a lot of the themes that he talks about i- has a lot to do with what's going on in the world today.
I don't think my character's making it out of this alive.
So he's in it as well. Let me show you here. Right, this is Eric was hold that up. That's so he's been modeling for me for one of the characters. He is one of the hero characters in the story.
Mhm.
His character, you play a college student
Yes.
who goes to this art history class, and you fall in love with this girl,
Yeah.
and you find out she already has a boyfriend.
Mhm.
So you kind of like start like stalking her on, instead of Facebook, we have LifeLog, which was the
I
original.
was researching.
Yeah,
Okay.
researching, right.
Try
So-
see to figure out topics, the conversation if we ever hook up and all. You know how it is.
So
not
Apex,
stalking.
so
I'm not Apex.
Apex sees this and realizes, okay, this is something I can have power over this guy on. And Apex basically builds up this knight for your character to
Mhm.
do all these different tasks. And at first it starts off very innocently, but then things get worse and worse and worse for your character.
To my
And
understanding.
he's tested. Yeah, he knows the basics of the story. But
Basics, yeah.
not all the details. Yeah. So it's gonna this is the first book. This is the first printing of the book. Okay, and then I did this first printing I did 2 years ago, and then it was really great because I sold it on Indiegogo,
Yep.
and then I got a lot of great feedback. All the people who bought the book, there was like a questionnaire, and people filled in the questionnaire, and I really got tremendous feedback about what people liked, and basically people liked more or less everything.
Mhm.
And it was a great resource to kind of learn that. And then I took that information, and knowing what I kind of knew about where the story was going, I kind of redid a lot of the pages and reconfigured things and finalized things out, because the interesting thing is when you do a comic book, it's like this is not your final, this is not your final thing. Okay, this is like the raw material. The final thing, this is, here's like a comic page with my evil cat. Apex's evil cat. This is the final thing. So you have to learn, like I say, one barrier, one opponent, especially to people who, when they're starting out, and this is very, very true of me, is perfectionism. Wanting to
Yeah.
nail it right from the beginning, get everything perfect right from the
Mhm.
beginning, and that's impossible. Okay, so ways that you can, I would say, if you want to make a comic book, okay, and you should, if you're a creative person, you have the talent to do something like that, you definitely should. But I would say start with an 8-page comic book. Start with
Go
something
small. Yeah.
start with something short, okay, that you can make, because that's the thing, is you want to see it, you want to see the thing in print. That's the thing, is for me, digital comic books are not really very meaningful. I want the final printed copy. That's what's so important to me. Okay, and the only way you do that is by printing comic books. And we live at a great time now, because we have print on demand. You don't have to print 10,000 copies of something to be able to see it in print now. Print 100 copies. See what it looks like. Give it to people. Give it to strangers. That's the big thing I would say, is try to get feedback from people who are not your friends.
We even stood out in front of New
That's
York
right. You
Comic
can sit at
Con,
Comic-Con.
passing it out to try to
That's
promote
right.
it too.
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
Because you want to get
Grassroots style.
That's
pretty
right.
much.
You want to get feedback from people who are not not your friends.
Mhm.
People who will tell you the truth, okay?
Mhm.
Because it's very hard to get that from people who know you and love you.
Yeah.
And they're gonna even if even if they're trying to help you, they hurt you if
Mhm.
they don't tell you, and
Yeah.
they can't really tell you the truth.
Unless
You,
they're drunk.
yeah, well, that's right. That helped. In vino veritas, that's for sure. So that's the thing, is try to get feedback on what you're doing, because like it depends, and depends on what kind of art you're making.
Mhm.
But if you're making something that's a commercial art, okay, and that's what this is. This is
Yeah.
commercial art. You
Mhm.
have to get feedback from other people and hear what people are going to
Did
say.
you have any challenges, even like even beyond like just like putting it all together, the drawing and all that? Like to my understanding, it's copyrighted in the whole
Oh
thing.
yeah,
Like
yeah. Well, I had a legal team working on the trademark.
there you
The
go.
the trademark alone took me 2 years to get, because I wasn't going to make a comic book without being able to use the name
And
and
what
be.
was that because of like COVID or whatever,
No. That was slightly
or
before, just because the government takes a long time, man.
just in general?
Just in
So that's even
general,
without COVID
yeah.
shenanigans.
They just take a long time, because like
Okay.
when you trademark something, it's a big long process, okay?
Okay.
And you have to get research materials. You have to basically, whenever I say, if you want to trademark something, the more individual you can make the thing,
Hmm.
the more likely the government is going to be
To
cool
make
with
it
it.
stand out
That's
more.
right.
Gotcha.
Because like the biggest thing that the government doesn't want is, they don't want people to be confused. And
Yes.
that's the way you get sued.
Hmm.
So the more, like this is all, like, I did this all myself. This is all custom. It's
Hmm.
all custom designed. The more you can make something a custom designed, the better off you are,
So
for sure.
so how'd you kind of come up with the story, like right from the very beginning?
I can't. The way I came up with the story was that I spent, like, when I was teaching at film school, I spent a year,
Sure.
when I was as I was teaching my students how to write, I was working on my own script and developing that script. And then
It's all our fault. We inspired this.
well, it was funny, because I actually got the original idea I got from a Gawker article from, I
Okay.
think it was like 2010, and it was about a Google engineer, and what he was doing was, he was stalking they had like high school kids coming to the Google campus,
Okay.
okay, and they were, to expose them to Google.
Hmm.
And one of these engineers was a very creepy guy,
Hmm.
and he got obsessed with some of the high school students, and then he started using his privileges as a Google engineer to start stalking them. And I thought, wow, what a great concept, that, like,
Hmm.
who are these people at these companies?
Yeah.
We don't know
Yeah.
anything about them. And that was kind of the germ of the idea. And that idea kind of rattled around in my head for, like, 6 7 years,
Gotcha.
until the day before the graduation at Five Towns. And I thought,
Gotcha.
oh, what if a serial killer worked inside of Google? What if a serial killer worked inside of Facebook, or one of
That's
these
what you were
type of
thinking at
companies?
our
Yeah,
graduation.
yeah, that's what I was thinking at the graduation. And then that idea was just so fascinating. And then I thought, okay, well, like, how do these companies work? Who are these people? And then, like, how could I kind of like expand it to where the world is going? Because I was, like, very interested in.
I could just imagine you now. Yeah, it'd be such a great idea if like a serial killer just went nuts with the AI and
Yeah,
everything.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That's it.
While clapping on your students, they're doing a good
That-
job getting their piece of
that's
paper, their scam and writing.
that's pretty much it. That's pretty true to life. Because that's the thing, is that if you have a really great villain, that generates a story. And I find, like, especially like modern filmmaking, I
Mhm.
think that the villains are weak, man. The villains
Yeah,
lately have been real weak tea,
I
you
would
know.
agree. I would agree.
And it's like, I want a villain who's like, he's gonna do whatever he can to get what he wants.
Someone at least that is slightly more intimidating.
That's, yeah, yeah.
Well,
Little intimidating, right?
a little bit. Well, I, since you're here, this is something that I've kind of been curious about.
Sure.
Because if I remember correctly, it was like a year after I graduated and everything. I kind of recounted this story in the first episode. But it was basically I graduated, started pursuing the film career and everything. Then out of the blue, I think you texted me or called me just to see how I was doing
You're
because we
right.
haven't talked. We didn't talk for like a little while. I think it was like a good year and a half, 2 years,
Really? That
something
long?
like that. I
Crazy.
think. Yeah, because when you made me the offer,
I must have been in the writing phase at that point, where it's just
most
like,
likely, most
yeah, I
likely.
was reading a stack of books
I
that
think I would text you on occasion, but like it was a good long while since we last talked in the whole thing. And because that's what shocked me was that that was like our first phone call since like since college.
College, yeah, yeah.
And when you offered me, hey, do you want to be in my comic book?
Yeah.
And I just wanted to ask you, why me?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I saw Eric, like Eric's character is kind of like almost like a Luke Skywalker type character, and I really kind of I could kind of see that in you. I could kind
Thanks.
of see like the germ, like a character that like one of the things that when I sent the book out to the Indiegogo campaign,
Hmm.
the comments that I got back were that like everyone really liked your character. They like you were a very
Because
very
I remember before you offered like me being like the physical
embodiment.
character,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
embodiment of your character. I remember you saying like you were kind of struggling trying to figure out what Patrick looked like.
That's right.
You
Yeah,
had the
because
idea for the character, but you didn't know what he looked like.
well, see, I have a couple like artistic styles. Like this is more like my cartoony style, and like,
Gotcha.
but depends on what style you're working in. Like if you're drawing something like one of the I would say one of the biggest cheats that you have as an artist is that if you look at professional artists' work, a lot of guys, like almost all the people,
Hmm.
they use reference. We look at like I look at reference. I'm looking at real life. Like I do,
Hmm.
I do life drawing class every single week where we're
Hmm.
drawing the nude model. And that was my artistic background. We look at real people. I'm looking
Yeah.
at flesh and bones people, and I want to look at the person in real life,
Hmm.
okay? Because
Right.
I don't want to look at a photograph. A photograph, it can kind of lie to you. If you
Hmm.
have someone in real life, like that's much more it's much more true. You can pull a lot more out from it, and you can make it look way more three dimensional than when if you look at a photograph. Okay,
Okay.
so that was the idea behind it. Is that like start with something real. Use a real person. This is my kitty cat.
Yeah.
So I start with a real kitty cat, and then I do my artistic statement
Okay.
within that reference, because then I have something to kind of go off of. If I'm just making it out of my head, it's like it can kind of be too like airy fairy. It can be like it kind of
Gotcha.
like floats around and it's not like concrete.
So when
So
we talked, you probably were just like, you know what, Eric kind of fits that what I
yeah,
was picturing.
yeah, exactly. I mean,
Okay.
it's like it's not you in the comic book.
Yeah.
I'm taking the reference and I'm making you into the
Into what you
I'm subtracting and refining, and usually
considering like Patrick, I would be looking up at
yeah,
Patrick.
yeah, he's tall. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, he would be for like 6 foot 2.
Yeah.
I thought
Not my size.
I thought it'd be interesting to kind of have like a character who was like almost like a string bean. Because then when he's fighting Apex,
Fair.
like when he's fighting Apex, it would be a really good contrast between someone really
Really buff, but
heavy and
really
buff,
long. Yeah.
and then someone who's like more thin. But also
Gotcha.
like you could think, oh, he is tall, he is big, he
Yeah.
he he does. You have to have the give the audience the idea that he has a chance.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
otherwise it's no good.
So that's awesome because I've been wondering that for a while.
That's cool.
But I'm
Yeah,
getting the
yeah.
signal to kind of wrap it up here.
He's
So
a good model. He can stand very still.
thanks.
That's right.
Thanks. I could stand still.
Yeah,
Thanks.
that's
Especially in weird poses,
many
definitely.
many people can't. So
Well, in conclusion, um, what if considering everything that we talked about,
sure.
you somehow get the DeLorean and go back in time and able to talk to your film school
Oh,
self.
interesting.
What you have all this advice for film students and as a teacher and everything. What would Professor Mars Black give put Stowe on film Mars Black
I would I
way
would
back
I
when?
would say forget about perfectionism. Just
Okay,
yeah,
interesting.
don't worry about being perfect. I mean, some of the coolest things in art, some of the coolest things in film are accidental. I remember when I was when I was in film school,
Hmm.
and we had this scene, like my a friend, he had this like incredibly detailed like storyboard. He had this scene at like a park bench, and it was like this old man. He was like
Hmm.
lying down on the park bench, and he was contemplating. It was this like very pretentious story. Okay,
Okay.
so we go out to shoot it. We're in Washington Square Park. Okay, and he had his actor, and like the guy had a sandwich. Okay,
Hmm.
so we're setting up the scene, and the man has like the sandwich, and he's like holding it down below. Some random dog in the park
Hmm.
came by and like was grabbed the sandwich and was fighting him over the sandwich, and like like I was the camera guy on this. I start rolling, like I see
Mhm.
we're seeing the scene.
The happy
The
accident.
dog comes in. They're fighting over the sandwich. It was this like Charlie Chaplin-esque scene. Okay, we shoot this thing.
It's a pretty good establishing shot
We
too.
rolled out. We rolled out on this amazing scene. It was like a 2 minute, 3 minute scene of them
Mhm.
fighting away, and the dog got a piece of sandwich and ran off. And then my friend was like, "Okay," he's like, "Let's go and shoot like my scene." It's like, dude, you just had the greatest film given to you, and you're like,
We don't
"Oh,
even
I
need that
want like
scene
we
now.
don't need any of that other stuff because like we got it. Just tell people this was your idea from the beginning."
Gotcha.
And he won. He won everything. And it was like it was all happy accidents. So it's like whatever whatever you're working on, like when you work on the script, like
Mhm.
it's like that's your first pass. That's like your artistic pass. Okay. Then when you go and you take the script and you want to make it in the real world is going to be different from what you imagined.
Yeah.
So
100%.
learn how to roll with the real world. And if the real world gives you something incredible, don't like be like, no, I don't want that amazing thing.
Kind of be open to it.
That's right. Be open to it. Learn how to roll with it, especially if you have no money. Especially when you're just starting and you have no money. It's like take the best out of every situation
Mhm.
and make it cool and make it work. Okay.
Gotcha.
And you never know how it's all gonna play. And it's like when you write the script, it's like that's your first draft. Then you go out and you shoot it. That's your second draft. And then when you edit it, that's your final draft. But
Mhm.
you can always come back to it.
Yep.
So it's like, don't worry about everything being like Stanley. Like I was like as a kid, I was obsessed with Stanley Kubrick,
Yep.
and
Yep.
it's like Stanley Kubrick,
So applying
everything was like,
everything in
that's
Stanley
right.
Kubrick style.
That's right. And it's like that when you're starting out is not a healthy way to look at things. This
Yeah,
idea
you
you're
don't
gonna
want to
do.
do every single shot over 100
You
takes.
can't, you can't do it. It's not, you don't have that, you don't have the ability, because I always say that like when you're dealing, in the real world, it's like you have a limited amount of time,
Yep.
okay? You have a limited amount of budget,
Yep.
okay? But you also have a limited amount of people's patience.
Yes.
And like you don't want to piss people off and waste people's time
Yep.
on a bunch of bullshit, okay? That's why if you can build a crew, people will be like, okay, we believe in you. We understand you're not wasting our time. You're not doing this just for egotistical reasons.
Right.
Okay, you're
Right.
doing this like that's always the thing is that'll be my other attitude is don't get into film for the money. I mean, the money can be fantastic, but it should be something that you do love on some level, at least when you start off.
Well,
Yeah.
thanks, Mr. Mars Black. I
Yeah.
really appreciate that as little Mars Black.
It's the only thing that would sustain you when things are difficult.
Gotcha.
Yeah. To try to be to try to do if you want to just make a lot of money, go be a corporate lawyer. And make a lot of money that way.
You heard
You
it
know.
here first,
Yeah.
folks.
So
From the one that's been there before.
that's right. That's the thing is the money that I've sometimes I made a lot of money, sometimes I made very little money. The money comes and goes. This to me is what like this I like every day I look at it and I'm like, dude, you made that. That's yours,
Yep.
like that's super super satisfying.
I have the
Yeah.
same feelings when I'm looking at my image. I'm like, I can't believe this is happening. But with that, this I would say concludes this episode.
Cool. Cool. Sounds good.
How can we like contact you
Yeah,
if anybody wants to reach out to you in
yeah, you
any
can see
way?
me on Instagram, Mr. Mister Mars Black on Instagram. And check me out there.
And
Yeah.
I'm your host for today, erockstar5 on Twitter, erockstar28 on Instagram as well. If you want to give me a follow for whatever reason, and also check out our social media at Vision Maker Productions on YouTube,
And this
Facebook, and all that.
this will be
And
this will be for sale soon. Not
yeah,
not this version. This is a
we'll
first,
we'll
it's a
update the
first
link.
edition.
We'll update the
Yeah.
links when it happens.
Yeah.
But also I want to throw a question out to the audience. For those of you who watched all the way to the end, what would you say? What would you guys say is your favorite takeaway from this episode? Let us know in the comments below. And Mr. Mars Black, thank you again for
Thank
coming
you.
out here
Yeah, it's a pleasure.
and talking.
I love talking about this stuff.
I do too,
Awesome.
man. All right, bye guys.
Peace.